I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching Screenwipe, a programme all about television.
Sometimes in the middle of the night I worry that maybe, just maybe, all this TV isn't actually very good for me, or for like the world in general and shit, yeah? Kurt Vonnegut once wrote that future generations would look back on TV as the equivalent of the lead in the water pipes that slowly drove the ancient Romans mad. And what if the novel-writing Grumpy Bones was right?
After all, it's not like you can just disregard the box. TV pumps out a river of ever-changing, ever-moving images, which is almost impossible to ignore because your brain's primed to pay attention to movement. It's an inherited evolutionary trait.
Cavemen who didn't notice wolves creeping up on them didn't survive to pass on their genes. We're descended from the jittery ones who looked over their shoulder every few seconds. When watching TV, you effectively have an out-of-body experience. Your physical self melts away and you're not a person anymore, just a half-sentient puddle. For proof, look at the effect telly has on kids. With the TV off, they're a hyperactive fun bundle. Switch it on and immediately they're like stunned fish. Good thing too, actually, if you ask me. I hate kids that run around all full of life, their tiny little sod hats.
And that's just with a normal-sized box. TVs are, of course, getting bigger by the second.
Soon you'll be able to put 4 of them together, facing inwards in a square, drop a roof on top and live in the damn thing. Little wonder some people get so sucked in they start caring more about people on telly than their own bloody families. The influence is everywhere. People dress like people on TV, talk like people on TV.
You're fired. I'm not bothered.
They even name their kids after people they've seen on TV.
It's a sobering thought, but in a million tiny ways, TV has probably influenced you as much as your own parents. That's a lot of power, which is why it's subject to so many checks and guidelines. British TV has to adhere to this fun bundle, the code laid out by regulatory body Ofcom. There's all sorts of stuff in here about offence and so on, but what's more interesting are the guidelines which portray a huge concern over how much influence this, the television, has over this, by which I mean my brain and not my ear, obviously. Now, I could stand here and read the whole thing out, but this is television, not a f***ing meeting. So instead, let's take some of the highlights and package them together in a vaguely sexy, entertaining sort of a way, just to stop you pissing off to another channel for the next few minutes.
Material that might seriously impair the physical, mental or moral development of people under 18 must not be broadcast.
There are several rules like this addressing the worry that kids might be upset by or copy what they've seen on TV, which is why you'll never see anything this irresponsible on CBeebies.
Once upon a time, in a dingly dell, there was a magic noose, which was very special, because any girl or boy who put their head through its ropey mouth was instantly carried away to a cartoon kingdom of dollies and chocolate.
Actually, that leads us to another point.
Methods of suicide and self-harm must not be included in programmes except where they are editorially justified and are also justified by the context.
The concern here is not so much to do with upsetting people, but inadvertently putting ideas in their heads.
Programmes must not include material which condones or glamorises violent, dangerous or seriously antisocial behaviour and is likely to encourage others to copy such behaviour.
That's why Jackass, which largely consists of Johnny Knoxville and co cracking up with laughter each time one of them fractures a pelvis, has to come equipped with a disclaimer explicitly commanding the viewer not to copy what they're watching.
Religion and race in particular are extremely hot potatoes for TV, as we've all seen recently.
Usually, CBB is a knockabout live-action satire in which famous people make arse-ingrained tits of themselves to the delight of the general public. But this time around, things weren't quite right from the get-go. For starters, the initial lineup was one of the feeblest in history, with a cast list that wouldn't qualify for entry into the VIP section of a branch of Greg's the Bakers. The glittering stars included Shock-Headed Peter, Aled Jones, Delbert Wilkins, Peter Cushing and a 500-year-old Pauline Quirk. Actually, I think it's disgraceful putting elderly people in the house.
Takes them half a f***ing series to get up the stairs.
The most interesting inmate was Donny Tourette, played by Rick Parfitt from Status Quo.
Being a rocker, he did all the usual outrageous rocker things. Jumping in the pool fully clothed, smoking, flobbing and trying it on with the groupies. Once the first chaotic night was over, things settled down into an agreeably tedious groove. But that was far too civilised, so before long, Big Brother decided to send in the goodies, a group so coarse they could lower the tone at an interspecies farmhouse gangbang. In they came. Jade, increasingly resembling a badly made Billy Piper action figure. Jack, a man so slow he probably has to whistle before going to the toilet so he knows which end to shit through. And Jackie, played here by Doc Cotton, reflected in the side of a dented kettle.
I'll just call her what you like, I'm sure no one will notice.
Straight away, the newcomers proved too much for some of the other housemates to stomach. Donnie gained 1,000 dignity points by scrambling over the wall.
I'm not fucking waiting hand and foot on some fucking moron and their family.
And then Ken stormed out.
Well, I say stormed out. Frankly, I had to hit the fast-forward button 3 times just to get the fucker across the room. By now, the show was in a tailspin, enlivened only by the Alan Partridge-style meltdown of Leo Sayer, who'd gradually lapsed into an eerie impersonation of Dudley Moore on the Derek and Clive albums.
Thank you, good fucking night. Fuck off. Fuck yourself.
Eventually, in an impressive postmodern protest against the narrative conventions of television, he broke through the fourth wall and assailed the author, represented here by 2 security guards and some production staff. For the first time in Big Brother history, the real spectacle was occurring outside the house. And while the show fell apart on screen, Leo inadvertently predicted what millions would be saying a few days later.
I'm one of the producers.
Well, then, you should never have embarked on this stupid thing. I hope you're making loads of money. This is sick. It's sick.
And from here on in, it all went wrong. The show began to focus on its sole remaining drama as Jade, Joe and Danielle, the world's thickest coven, embarked on a simmering feud with polite and elegant Bollywood star Shilpa Shetty. Bitchiness and verbal bullying have always been part of Big Brother, so seeing 3 girls team up to snipe at another wasn't really new. What was new, however, was the apparent racial element to some of their remarks.
I've got a big hairy face. I must bleach the hairs off my face.
No, you see, you probably shouldn't say that on the telly because it might sound a bit racist.
Has she got a face like a man? Like Wolf Boy, probably.
And that.
Is that, do they do that in India, eat with the hands?
I'll just black up and have done with it. By now, thousands were complaining about perceived racism. Whether it was or wasn't racist, in my view, the producers could have intervened at this point, reminding all the contestants that discrimination wouldn't be tolerated in the house, thereby giving everyone a chance to think before digging themselves in deeper. I don't actually know if that would have been the right thing to do. Well, not unless I'd had the foresight to see which way it was all heading.
You're a normal housemate, like everybody else.
By now, millions were tuning in to see all this racism they'd heard about, and in that context, the argument looked more like a lynching than what I suspect it really was, a grim one-sided slanging match over a stock cube.
Shut yourself up.
You know what? Your claim to fame is this.
No,
Good
no,
for
no.
you.
My claim to fame is meeting you, you fucking loser.
Of course, it didn't help when Giggly Boobs opened her thick hole and said this.
I think she should fuck off home.
Yeah, well, that certainly sounds like textbook racism. Not that she's ever read a textbook, but not without chewing the corners like a baby chimp. Anyway, cue Bedlam.